I want to talk about Philadelphia, which
I knew we'd get here eventually.
I watched parts of the game on Monday where they were home against Chicago, and they were coming off that loss to Brooklyn, which was close. And they just get the doors blown off by the Chicago Bulls. They wind up losing by 32 points. They were trailing by as many as 50 in a home game against the Chicago Bulls. What are we talking about here? Like, what is happening right now in Philadelphia? Joel Embiid is
Have
likely
they lost
headed
8 in a row as we sit
8
here?
in a row, 9 of the last 10.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid is likely headed for another knee surgery that can keep him out for God knows how much long. He's got 4 years left in that deal, by the way. Max money. You got Paul George questioning the team's heart. Nick Nurse questioning the team's heart. Tyrese Maxey questioning how hard the team plays. Is there anything positive to take out of Philadelphia? Like this is a basketball car crash is what it's turned out to be.
The only positive they can go for now is to try to make sure that they don't lose their top 6 protected pick.
Yes.
So in a way, these 8 straight losses have been a great drive toward not losing your pick. That I'd say I'm trying to be positive. Come on, you said.
Let me just say one thing about that. Like,
Okay.
I saw Nick Nurse was like, I know he's just kind of towing the company line, but he's like, they're not ruling out Joel Embiid playing at some point this season. Like, Vince Papale should play for the 76ers before Joel Embiid does. They should have invincible-style tryouts in Philadelphia to allow fans to play before Joel Embiid ever touches that floor. Their only priority for the next 20-some-odd games this season.
Do not lose the pick.
Do not lose that draft pick. It is top 6 protected. Otherwise, it goes to, wait for it, Oklahoma City,
Thunder,
which gets
baby.
another draft pick. If they wind up with like the 7th or 8th pick because they tried hard down the stretch and they brought Joel Embiid back, Josh Harris should fire everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Your only priority has got to be protecting that top 6 draft pick.
I have to think that. So then when you said, is there anything good out of this car crash, is that they are getting closer, I think, to not losing their pick. However, overall, it's obviously bleak. And the thing about Joel and surgery and this, that, and the other is I really railed against the 65 games awards rule because I was worried that it would push guys to do things they shouldn't do. And sure enough, the game that he got hurt in, if you go back to that time and place, he was being nationally criticized because he missed, I don't remember, was it a game against Giannis? Was it a game against Jokic? It was one of those games where everyone's like, oh, you're ducking the other good center, you know, whatever. He didn't play because he was hurt. He got a ton of pressure. He was right near the line in terms of staying on pace to make an awards push, etc. And he played in a game he shouldn't have played in. He got hurt in a way that had severe repercussions and then came back earlier than anyone thought he should to try to make a push for the playoffs and through the playoffs to help that team. And then he went on and played this summer in a very uneven way during the Olympics when he clearly shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And all of that stems from a rule that I will still sit here 2 years later and say, this is not how you solve it. It's a legitimate problem getting guys to play more, but it's not how you solve it. And we are seeing it with Joel Embiid. We may have lost permanently one of the bright stars in the league because of this rule. So I'm going to go back and keep saying that. However, for Philadelphia, that discussion is over. That doesn't help you. What helps you is what's going forward. And I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, if another surgery is going to do it. People who
how
are
many
medical,
surgeries would that be at this point?
well, people who are much more medically expert than me with actual degrees and everything, which apparently in this country you don't need any more to be an expert, but I'm going to still go for it, that you do need to know
Twitter
what you're
account.
doing and have gone to school, say that a surgery or even a series of surgeries might not help him. That if you look at the Lonzo Ball surgery, that might be the closest thing that
cost him
could
2.5
help him.
years.
It cost him 2.5 years, and he's not the player he used to be. And Lonzo is much smaller than Joel is, right? And moves differently. So while there is a little bit of a discussion of A, do you just shut him down? B, does he have another surgery? That whole discussion kind of is predicated on the fact that if he had another surgery, it would be worth it because then he could come back and be Joel Embiid again. I don't know if that option is on the table anymore. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if I'm going to know. But I just don't think we can assume that if he has another surgery, he'll be back next season and be Joel again.
I don't think you can assume that at all. He's past 30, multiple procedures on his knees, multiple procedures on his feet, which have been resolved largely in recent years. You pull for the guy because he's a good guy, and you want to see a player like that break through, get through the second round, find that success, kind of a redemption story. But when he went through, and like the 65 games thing I get, but when he was no showing training camp and no showing the first part of the season, that's when you knew it was really bad. And that's when you start thinking back, like, what were you doing playing for USA Basketball? Why were you not resting these knees when you should have to get ready for the NBA season? How important was winning a gold medal to you? You're under contract for 4 more years, 5 years when he started this season.
Yep.
I don't know. They're in just a tough spot because now they've got 3 more years left of Paul George, who has not had a good season. 4 more years of Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey is still a star there. And the only thing you can hope for is like, hey, maybe we get a high draft pick, like 8th or 9th, that it turns out to be a really good player. It's supposed to be one of the deepest drafts or top 6, should say.
I was going to say,
yeah,
better
8th or
not
9th,
be 8 or
Oklahoma
9.
City. Oklahoma City's getting that pick. But let's say we get like the 5th pick in the draft,
Yeah.
and it turns out to be like a young star. We get the next Tyrese Maxey to play next to him.
It's a deep draft.
Like maybe you do it, but like that's what we're banking on if we're Philadelphia. They have the 6th worst record in the NBA right now. Like if I'm the fans of Philadelphia, I'm booing every bucket that they get in games. Like I don't want to see this team win any more games.
See, this goes back to, it feels pretty good to be a Knicks fan now in comparison to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, by comparison. I still like, giving Joel Embiid that contract extension still sticks with me. Like why would you do it? Like what was the motivation when he had 2 years left on his contract to give him a 3-year extension? Like when you probably knew something was going on with his knee, like why not wait 1 more year until next summer to give yourself some options there? They tied him down. And now, for at least the next 3 years, you're landlocked in with a banged up Embiid and a Paul George getting a little bit older. Like
Have you talked to Daryl about that at all?
Not really. No, I should say not at all. No, like I haven't had any direct discussions with him.
I'm curious what his answer to that question
I mean, look,
would be.
Daryl's historically, Daryl loves stars, right? He attaches himself to big name stars. James Harden was his guy in Houston. Joel Embiid is his guy in Philadelphia. And I admire that.
You win titles with stars. It's
Absolutely.
not like it's some crazy theory of
I admire the loyalty. And again,
Yeah.
if Joel Embiid had 1 year left in his contract, I probably would have
Yeah.
done the exact same thing. But having 2 years left and a history of knee injuries,
Yes.
it just, I never saw the...
Well, the flip side of that is Miami said to Jimmy Butler, we're not going to pay you, right? You have an injury history. You're rounding 35 years old. We're not going to keep paying you, et cetera. Now Jimmy's playing great for I said San Francisco. I keep saying San Francisco because I feel like that should be okay to say.
Basically, yeah, the base of San Francisco Warriors, yes.
All right. Golden State because of all the things. Dallas, obviously, for whatever you think of that trade and what they got back for it, which is a discussion I will have for the rest of my life, they clearly decided he was not worth the physical investment of that much money that they were going to pay him for what they were going to get in the future. And it is just sort of an interesting question because if you're a front office guy, there is a little bit of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because if you make the decision, hey, this seems risky, I don't want to invest this much money over this many years, you're a fool that you let go of such a great player. And that if you do make the investment and it turns out that the guy is as injured or as much of a risk as you thought he might be, you're a fool in that direction too. It's a tough position a lot of these guys are in. And it's why elite front office people are so valuable because being able to walk and dance that line is such a skill. And I think it's one of the most underrated parts of NBA team building is who is in there in that front office. So many franchises, it's just a series of musical chairs and kind of who are they getting? And when you get the really, really good guys, the Sam Prestis of the world, et cetera, you see the difference.
Yeah. I mean, and I think for this team, Nick Nurse is probably the first one to pay the price on this year.
Which is not his fault.
No, I mean, some of it maybe. Like, the coach has something to do with the problems that every team has. Now, like, is it entirely his fault? No, of course not, because Joel Embiid being out has crippled them.
And Paul George being out
and
a
Paul
big
George,
chunk of the year.
Man, these things are so predictable too. Like Paul George was healthy last year, but before then he had not been healthy in the years prior. Joel Embiid history of health issues. It's bad in Philadelphia. Just watching, like I wasn't watching in real time, but then I see on Twitter like some of the score updates. I'm like, what is happening here? Like what's going on with these guys? And turn it on, it's like, brutal. 50-point deficit in the fourth quarter.